All righty. So yeah, good morning everyone. My name's Cameron. I'll be handling the vehicle buying seminar today. Just to kind of give you a little background on myself, kind of why I'm up here, or at least qualified to be up here. My background is in the dealer world. I've kind of grown up on one. My dad has been a mechanic at a dealer longer than I've been alive. But I sold cars, was a finance manager for many years. So yeah, probably coming up close to a decade in terms of how long I've been doing this in the car business. So objectives for today. Car buying is overwhelming. So just more information that I can give you, hopefully the better, and more prepared it makes you. We're going to break down the purchase process from researching vehicles to actually buying them and kind of what that process looks like. And then just kind of help you provide tools, right? And that comes in the form of, okay, what resources do we have online versus in branch, stuff like that. So kind of just jumping right into it. Step one in all this is to just kind of narrow your search. From there, you're researching your top choices in terms of vehicles itself. Where Mayo Employees Federal Credit Union comes in is securing your financing. That way you can go into the dealer and say, nope, I got my own money that I'm going to use for this. And then obviously selecting the best vehicle for you, making sure that you're not overpaying for a vehicle. So just making sure that the vehicle price is where at least a reasonable price or a fair price should be. And then of course, at that point, you're researching the vehicle history and then actually the purchase process. Now, when you actually go buy a vehicle, some of these can get jumbled up in different orders. That's fine. That's pretty common. So don't feel overwhelmed if it's not going in that exact order. But we're going to start from the top. So step one is narrow your search. Now, this first sentence is one that I personally struggle with a lot. Base your decisions on fact rather than emotion. I am a very impulsive car buyer, which thankfully my wife has accepted. But the big thing is, yeah, base your decision on fact rather than emotion, right? If you really like a vehicle, but it is overpriced or this or that, or there's an accident on it, stuff like that, it may not be the best vehicle for you. So making sure that the vehicle fits your needs and budget is super important, right? If you have a family, a two-door coupe probably isn't gonna be the right car for you. But things like a truck or a minivan, SUV, stuff like that may suit your needs a little bit better. So the biggest step in all of this is kind of figure out what you want, right? What do you have in your vehicle now that you wish it had? And then go shopping from there. And then of course, the emotion aspect. Are you prioritizing a vehicle you want that doesn't necessarily fit your needs, right? For me, I'm a big two-door vehicle person. That doesn't work with a dog, so I can't do that even though I want to do that. So I've owned them in the past. As much as I want to say, hey, folding down that front seat so that they can jump in the back works, doesn't. So I drive four-door sedans, right? So again, just making sure that that vehicle fits your needs and obviously your budget, right? As you narrow that down, there's a couple different ways that you can buy vehicles. Now, there are two up here, but I'm going to throw a third one in for fun. The first one is new vehicles. Now, this has been a topic of great discussion over the past couple of years, especially with the auto market being the way that it is. But there are benefits to new vehicles. First, obviously, the tricky part is the availability of which new cars are on lots. But the biggest kind of benefit of a new vehicle, there's no need to worry about the vehicle's history. It's brand new, right? There may be 10 miles on the thing when you actually go pick it up, right? The other piece comes with the factory warranty. Most companies, unless you're doing a luxury brand, are going to be doing 3 or 36,000 mile bumper to bumper coverages, which means that it will cover everything between the bumpers, right? Touchscreen goes out, backup camera, stuff like that. You're taken care of by the manufacturer, all right? The other kind of downside is, and not as much now as it was 4 years ago, but the drive-off instant depreciation, right? You've heard the phrase, as soon as you drive that vehicle off the lot, it's going to lose its value, right? Thankfully, as a consumer right now, that isn't necessarily the case because used vehicle prices are where they're at, right? They're pretty high right now. So there's less of that right now, but definitely something to take into consideration. These do have the best interest rates and rebates on them though, right? A vehicle loan is essentially all about risk, right? Is the car going to break down? Stuff like that. It's probably the number one reason people miss payments is because they're fixing their car. Well, new cars, they have warranties. They don't break as often because they're brand new. So you're going to get a better interest rate on them because they are a less risky loan. All right. The one that I'm going to throw in between new vehicles and used vehicles is actually certified vehicles. Now, this is something that a lot of manufacturers do. It is something that's your little mom and pop shops won't be able to do. So these are used vehicles that fit a standard set by the manufacturer. So for example, I'm going to use Honda, right? If you have a certified Honda, that means that the dealership has gone through Honda's process to say, yes, it meets all these kind of qualifications to become a certified vehicle. And usually there's additional warranty added on by the manufacturer on that used vehicle. So it may be 2 or 3 years old, but it's going to have an extra year of warranty or an extra 2 years of warranty because of that. All right. Now, granted, you are going to pay a little bit of a premium for that because it does cost money to go through that program, but you're going to be getting a better car, right? And then the last one is just plain old used vehicles, right? Now, this is stuff that you're going to find all over the place, private party, obviously at dealerships as well. They're often less expensive. Thankfully, that is becoming more and more true as time goes on. So dealerships aren't really, or manufacturers, the kind of chip delay and stuff like that that you've heard, that's kind of going away, thankfully. So vehicle prices on used are dropping, which is nice. And it's a trend that's trending downward. Doesn't mean it won't change, but they are going to be less expensive than new vehicles. That being said, there is less drive-off depreciation because someone already took that hit for you when they bought it new, right? So it's inherently going to be cheaper. That being said, there are the fear of the unknown. How was this vehicle treated? Did it have its oil changes done properly? Was it driven by a 17-year-old high school kid that's racing the thing, or just by a normal person that's driving it to and from work, appreciating the speed limit, that type of stuff. So that's one of the things that we'll talk about in terms of, okay, how do you do your research to make sure that you know kind of the vehicle's history? Alrighty. So the next piece that I'm going to go over in narrowing your search is the budget portion of things. You have to make sure that a vehicle fits your budget. One of my favorite things when people came in and I asked them, okay, where do you want your payment to be at when they're buying a vehicle? They say, I don't care. And it's like, oh, okay, so $10,000 a month works for you. And they're like, oh, no. And then it's like, okay, so you do have a budget. You just need to figure out exactly what that is, right? And so you need to find something that you're comfortable with. And I mean, don't say max. Hey, I want a max payment of $500. Well, your payment's going to be $500 then, right? The big thing is making sure it's something that's reasonable, right? Where if you have a tough month or if you unexpected expenses, you can still make that payment without it impacting anything too much, right? That being said, there are many ways of doing this. Thankfully, MEFQ has an online loan calculator tool that you can use. So if you go to our website, go to loans and mortgages, hit vehicle loans on the right or left-hand side, excuse me, there is going to be a loan calculator. You can type in how much you want to finance, what your interest rate is going to be. And again, just these are an estimator. It is not perfect, right? It's not going to be 100% accurate, but it's going to get you close enough to have a good idea. All right. But yeah, the price range is based on the monthly payment you're comfortable with. An easy calculation that I like to use, every 10,000 that you finance is about $200 a month. So if you're financing 10 grand, it's 200, 20 grand, 400, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a pretty easy calculation that you can use just to kind of make it simple. All right. But from there, okay, what are your top choices? So let's say you're looking for an SUV. Okay, there's plenty out there. There's Ford, there's Chevy, there's Dodge, there's Honda, Subaru. I mean, there's a million different brands out there. Not a million, but you know what I mean. Search reliability, search pricing, search special financing offers. So a lot of these, okay, how do I do that, right? You can either do boots on the ground where you're going into dealerships, talking to salespeople, but a lot of people, and I would say 90% of people, start online, right? What do I want? these are just a couple good websites that we use and recommend for doing your car research. Auto Trader, TrueCar, Consumer Reports. But a lot of times I'd tell people, go directly to the manufacturer's website because no one's going to want you to buy their car more and give you the benefits of that vehicle than the people trying to sell it, right? So if you're looking at Honda, go to Honda's website, look up the CR-V, look up the HR-V. If you're going buying a Subaru, go to Subaru's website. Look at those vehicles because they're going to tell you the most about that vehicle. And then obviously go to reviews, talk to your friends, stuff like that. Everyone's going to have an opinion on what a good car is. And from there, it's just going to give you more information to make that decision. All right. Again, once you do that, there are trim levels to vehicles. So for example, I worked at Ford for the last couple of years that I was in the dealer world. If I say F-150, that's going to range anywhere from 30 grand all the way up to 120 nowadays, right? So there is a broad range of vehicles, even within a single model, right? And so the nice thing about that is, again, those are listed on the manufacturer's websites, but they're also listed on dealer websites. So whether it's an F-150, XL, XLT, Lariat, all the way up to their Ford Lightning Platinum or whatever it is nowadays, right? All of that has the pricing directly listed on there. If you're shopping for vehicles private party, so from someone else, Craigslist.com, obviously, it's there. One benefit that we have being kind of supporting Mayo Clinic is the Mayo Classifieds as well. Great place to look. Those are Mayo employees selling whatever. And obviously there's plenty of vehicles on there. CarsDirect.com is a good one. And then obviously, like we talked about, hit the actual car lots themselves. Go to a dealership, find yourself a salesperson that you can trust. Again, I say that you can trust. If you don't like them, just tell, nope, I'm going to go somewhere else or ask for someone else, right? It's okay to do that. You are the consumer, right? They're going to tailor to you, all right? And then this is kind of where we come in. This is obviously the most important part of buying a car. How are you going to pay for it, right? So secure your financing. Now, we offer what's called pre-approvals. So you can apply online or in person. Just stop by one of our many branches to do that. But we're just going to do an application and give you, hey, you're approved for X amount. And then if it's more, if it's less, obviously that's something that you can talk with your loan officer about. But yeah, it's super easy. This is something that in person probably takes 10 minutes, online even less because you know your stuff better than I do. And then from there, we can verify the amounts and then of course disperse the funds to the dealers as needed. Now this removes a lot of stress on people usually because one of the hardest parts about going into a dealer or shopping with someone is, okay, how are you going to pay for this, right? And usually that's where finance managers come in, and it gets very confusing. With a pre-approval from Mayo Federal Credit Union, you just say, nope, I'm pre-approved through Mayo Clinic, and I'm just going to write you a check, or I'll get you a check. And that's it. You're done. Easy peasy. No going through rates and terms and this with them. You just know that you already have that in your back pocket. And honestly, they don't need to know that until you get in there and they ask how you're going to pay for it. Right? It's none of their business. It's your money. So that's kind of where we come in. Now, that being said, dealerships do offer financing. And this is one of the things that kind of promotional rates are kind of coming back now that vehicles are becoming a little bit more, well, not scarce. And I am a firm believer in take the lower number. Now, thankfully, we work at Mayo Employees Federal Credit Union, which means that usually we're always the lower number, but it's not always the case. You do see manufacturers offering things like 0% financing or 1.9 or 1.79, whatever it is. And those are typically offered directly through the manufacturer. So if you go to a Honda dealership, that is offered by Honda, not the dealership, right? The dealership is the middleman in that situation. So if they're offering 0% financing, great. It's free money. But you'll have to finance through the dealer to do that. Now that being said, once you actually go through that process, there's a couple questions that you need to ask. Now, the first is, how long do you keep your vehicles, right? For me, thankfully, my wife has accepted that I'm going to swap vehicles pretty often. So I'm only going to keep mine for 2 or 3 years, which is a bad financial decision, but it's fun for me. So I'm going to keep doing it. But if you keep your vehicle 5, 6, 7 years, or even longer than that, 10, 15 years, there's a couple different things that you need to think about. Now, when you buy a vehicle, specifically new, a lot of the times there are rebates on that vehicle. So, hey, we'll give you $1,000 if you buy this car, or hey, we'll give you $3,000 if you finance with us. And from there, that's where things like the promotional financing comes in as well. So a lot of people, or a lot of manufacturers, will do 0% financing, or you can use your own financing. We'll give you $3,000 to do it. And at that point, it's just a calculation of, okay, how much interest am I going to be paying if I go with something that has an interest rate of higher than 0, right? And again, we can help with that. Give us a call. We have those calculators right in front of us every day. So if you're ever having questions about that, ask, right? And then, of course, obviously, those are usually offered on specific vehicles and stuff like that. But the big piece is down here, and that's the hidden fees. A lot of those, thankfully less nowadays, but a lot of those do have prepayment penalties or fees associated with them, right? And so that's just one of those. Just read the fine print. And if you don't know, ask, right? Because even as the dealer, they are required by law to tell you those things, all righty? If they don't, great. You can get out of it, right? Obviously, that's a lot of information on a lot of complicated pieces. But at the end of the day, buying a car should be relatively a fun experience. And I say fun, but a lot of people hate it, right? But the best part is you get to go home with a different vehicle at the end of the day. Test drive with a friend, right? I had a lot of people, if you don't want to go to a dealership alone, great, I get it. It's a high pressure sales environment. That is literally their job, is to sell you a car that day when you go in, right? So bring someone with. Let someone kind of be your sounding board for your ideas of, hey, I don't like this car, or hey, I do like this car. And then that way you kind of have backup, right? It's just easier to go with someone else. And if you don't have someone else, at least now you have the information to do that. Alrighty. But this is the big one. Remember, it's okay to tell the salesperson you are only there for a test drive, right? Now, will that reduce the amount that they try to sell you the car? No, or at least no to a good salesperson. But they're going to understand that, hey, you know what? If I do a really good job showing this vehicle and giving you a good experience, you're probably going to come back to me, right? And if they do that. Go back to them, right? They've earned that. But at the same time, it's okay to say no, right? It's okay to say, do you want to take, like, if they ask you, do you want to take that car home today? It's okay to say no. And then give them a valid reason. Of course, they're going to come back with what they've been trained to do of, okay, perfect. Well, what is it going to take to get you to buy this car today? It's okay to say nothing. Nothing's going to make me do that. But again, it's just knowing that it's okay to do with. But if you do decide to go back and buy that car, make sure you buy that from that salesperson, because they did their job, right? This is the next bit, verifying the vehicle's value. Now, for this, I like using big, easy numbers. So I'm going to say a Corvette, right? Brand new Corvette, 100 grand. That's what we're going to call it. That's what that vehicle is worth, all right? As a loan officer, if you say, I want to borrow $150,000 so that I can buy this $100,000 Corvette, what do you think I'm going to say? No, I am not going to let you do that. If you want to pay with your own money to do that, go right ahead. You got more money than sense at that point. But the big thing is, okay, how much is the vehicle actually worth? All right. Now, right now, for new cars, it's a little tricky, right? I'm sure everyone's heard about dealers marking up this, dealers marking up that. In this market, if you buy it for MSRP, good, right? That is considered a good price for a new vehicle right now. If they have rebates and discounts on top of it, awesome, even better, right? Should you be paying more for MSRP? Probably not, right? Unless the vehicle is insanely hard to get, right? So for example, we were chatting earlier, Toyota Siennas, vans, Chrysler Pacificas, stuff like that, probably going to pay a little bit of a markup because it's taken a year and a half to get those vehicles into the dealer, right? So when they get them, they want to make their money on them. You get it, but at the same time, that is up to you on whether or not you want to make that decision. But this comes into play a little bit more in the used market, right? Because at this point, like we talked about earlier, that fluctuates a lot. It's really volatile. And there's a couple resources that we use here to determine prices on vehicles, or what should be a fair price. Now, the two that we use are called Black Book and NADA. NADA has now been, I believe, sold, and it is now called JD Power, but it's the same thing and it's referred to as the same. These are, and specifically NADA, these are websites that you as a consumer have access to. I think we pay for Black Book, and so I don't know if you necessarily have access to that, but we do. Use us as a resource. That's why we're here. After the 15th time that you call me, though, and ask about a different vehicle each time, I'm probably going to say no. Just do an application and we'll fill it out. But NADA will you type in the vehicle, year, make, model, trim level, and if you have the VIN number too, that's great. And then it'll kind of spit out some prices. It'll spit out what retail price should be, what you'd get if you traded it in, and then it'll also throw a weird one in called wholesale value. Ignore the wholesale value, that's for dealers. If they just send a vehicle to auction, that's what they're going to kind of try to get for it. But you'll notice that the retail value is always going to be more than the trade-in value for the exact same vehicle. Why is that, right? If I go and I trade in my vehicle, I am going to get less for it than if I were to sell it outright. Just is what it is, right? Dealers are there to make money. That is their job. They are going to need to offer you a number for your vehicle that allows them to recondition your vehicle. And even if you say, no, it's perfect, it's not. There's something wrong with it to the point where they need to fix it so when they sell it, they got their butts covered, right? Because if the brakes need changing in 10,000 miles, whoever buys that car is going to call the dealer. They're not going to call you. And so they need to make sure that all that stuff is taken care of. So just as an example, when we took vehicles in on trade when I worked at the dealers, the average cost, even for a 2-year-old vehicle, to recondition to the point where we can sell it was about $2,500 to $3,000, no matter what. And a lot of that is doing things like if the vehicle is new enough to be certified. Certifying a Ford specifically cost about $1,600 to do. So the dealer needs to offer you a number that allows them for that room, plus a little bit more because they're there to make money, right? And that's why that number, when you look on NADA, is lower than what the retail cost is, right? Because they got to put their numbers in, right? But that being said, kind of goes back to my original point. If you're buying a 2015 F-150, and NADA says, you know what, it should sell for, I'm just going to throw out a number, 40 grand, right? But they have it priced at 45. I can go over a little bit, but at a certain point, I'm going to tell you, no, that vehicle the value isn't there for them to be asking that much. And if you want to buy it and put a down payment on it because you really want that, that's fine. But this is my max that I'm going to allow you to finance on that vehicle. And we run into that all the time, right? Just because there's so many different types of vehicles and all of them depreciate at certain rates and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, if you have a question, just call us. That's why we're here. All right. Now, that being said, there is a couple of things that you want to look at when you actually find a vehicle. And a lot of that is just the vehicle history, right? Where was it serviced? Was it in any accidents? Stuff like that. A reputable dealer will provide you a free report of that if you ask. A lot of them even have that online. So if you go and you look at a vehicle, and again, I'm using Ford because that's what I was used to. If you go on a Ford dealer's website, 90% of them will have check the Carfax right there. And you can click on it and it'll pull up a Carfax report. Now this is something that the dealer pays for, right? If you're buying a vehicle private party and you want to get a Carfax report, you can go to Carfax or AutoCheck. They're essentially the same thing, just two different companies doing it. And usually you'll have to pay to get that. It's like $5-6 to do it. But it'll give you the breakdown of what the vehicle has been through. Where was it serviced? Did it have any accidents? And stuff like that. And so it just provides that information. Now, it's going to tell you previous owner information in terms of where it was. So for example, my cars will say serviced at in Rochester, Minnesota at this mileage, this mileage, this mileage, right? And for me, it'll be every 3,000 miles because that's when I change my oil, right? Or rotate my tires and stuff like that. So that report will say that. It will not say Cameron Pedersen, who lives at XXX, and this is his phone number, serviced it there. You're not going to get that information, but it will show you the vehicle information. It'll also say if an accident has been recorded, all right? Now, this is a little tricky, and I would like to throw a little asterisk in there. There is a difference between an accident and damage when you look at these reports, okay? An accident is another car hitting you, or vice versa. So if it says accident reported, it'll usually tell you where was the damage. So it'll literally show a diagram of the vehicle and it'll say front end damage here. And then usually it says minor, severe, all the way to the point where vehicle totaled. It'll tell you that information. Now, if it says damage, that is different. That would be like, hey, I was pulling out of the driveway and or the garage, and I accidentally got too close to the edge and it ripped my mirror off. That is damage, right? That is not an accident. And so you took it to the body shop, they replaced that mirror, everything's good to go, all right? So that I wouldn't necessarily hold against a car, right? But an accident that has damage or the capability of damaging the frame or anything like that, okay, something that you should probably at least ask that question about. And that brings me to, if an airbag has been deployed, if a car has been flooded, if the odometer was reported wrong, if it's been in a fire, anything like that, it will show as what's called a salvage title, all right? Now, a salvage title is essentially when the cost to fix it is over 50% of what the vehicle's value is worth. So if the vehicle is worth 10 grand, it's gonna cost you 6 grand to fix it. The insurance company will say, nope, we're totaling out this vehicle. And they sell that vehicle at auction. If someone wants to fix it up using their own money, that's fine, they can do that. But there are companies out there that's how they sell cars. They buy those damaged vehicles, they fix them up to fit Minnesota's standard of safety, and then they resell them. But it will show as a salvage title, which means that the vehicle has been damaged in the past. Now that being said, usually those are typically priced, it says 30%, it's usually more like 40 in terms of the actual value of the vehicle compared to what they are selling them for, but they will be cheaper. So if you find a deal that is too good to be true, ask if it's a salvage title, because if it is, you can get them to go lower. I guarantee it. So there's that, but the big thing is if it doesn't have, if you look at that Carfax, if you look at that car report, anything like that, and it doesn't have a history, they may have been doing oil changes themselves. Okay, if that's the case, how much do you trust that, right? Because a car without history is a car that probably hasn't been serviced very well. Or if it has, they should at least be able to, and this is more specific to private party purchases, they should at least be able to show you receipts, right? My dad still changes his own oil. He's a mechanic, I get it, right? But he keeps all his receipts, so then when he goes to sell those vehicles, he can say, no, I changed the oil every 3,000 miles. Here's my proof, right? Because he can say that, but if he doesn't have receipts, who are you to believe him, right? And so that's the big piece. Now, this last one here, if you're unsure, have a car inspected by a licensed mechanic, all right? Even if it's a dealer, you can, when I worked at dealers, I had plenty of people that were like, hey, can I take this to my mechanic? It's like, yeah, of course, right? Because as a dealer, we want you to have the person that you trust more than us, obviously, to take a peek at it, right? And if they say, hey, you're good to go, then great, we're good to go. But at the same time, if you have someone that you trust, have them do that for you, right? And even if you don't, you just take it to a third party if you really want to. You don't have to, but it's there as an option if you're a little bit on the fence. Alrighty. And then one of the last ones here, actually make your purchase. And this is probably the most important part of all of this. Plan your time accordingly. It always takes longer than you think it will. All right. If you plan an hour to buy your car, not going to happen. All right. It just won't. I've had people, when I was a finance manager, come in and say, hey, I got 20 minutes. I got to get through this. It's like, I don't care as a finance manager because you're here to buy my product, right? I have legal pieces that I needed to go over with them that I needed to make sure that they understood because it is a legal, like, binding contract, right? Whether you're paying cash or whether you're financing, right? So they have pieces that they need to go over legally in order for you to buy this car. So realistically, I always tell people, plan 3 hours. Right? If it takes less than that, great, right? If it's more than that, use your own judgment, right? But it's okay to even say no at that point, right? And again, just be clear about your expectations with price and be ready to just say, no, I'm not paying that price, right? If you've agreed upon a price beforehand, obviously get that in writing. And thankfully, a lot of dealerships nowadays are moving to the non-negotiation buying, which is great in my opinion. I've worked for both negotiation dealerships and one-price stores. I'm a huge fan of one-price stores, both from the consumer side and from the actual selling side, because there's no BS about it, right? It's like going to Target. You wouldn't go into Target, buy a loaf of bread, and go up to the cashier and say, nope, I'm going to give you 50 cents instead of $1, or whatever it is, right? You just wouldn't do that. It's the same thing with dealers nowadays. A lot of them have moved to a one price, and it's not going to be the best price out there, but it's going to be a fair price because they have to, right? Because there's this beautiful thing called the internet, where if you go and you look 2015 F-150, you're going to see 3,000 results. So their price needs to be priced well in order for them to sell that vehicle, right? And so again, just be clear about your expectations. If you have 2 hours and that's all you got, great. Tell the salesperson, hey, I'm going to be here at this time. I got 2 hours. Because odds are they're going to do everything that they possibly can to get you in and out in that 2 hours, right? But at the same time, plan for more, all right? This brings me to the next piece. Negotiate not only your purchase price, already talked about that, but your trade-in price. And again, we talked about that a little bit as well, right? The dealer needs to have room, right? But that is the one kind of component in the transaction that you as the consumer have a little bit more control over, and that the dealers have a little bit more of leeway on, right? I've seen plenty of non-negotiation dealers say, hey, I'll give you $500 for your old trade-in. And then you come in and you say, nope, you're going to give me $2,500 because I just fixed X, X, and X. And they're going to say, all right, fine, and do it because they want to sell the new one, right? And so you are able to negotiate that more than you are the price of the new one. Alrighty, so whenever anyone asks, hey, what do you think my vehicle's worth on trade? Go to the NADA, go to those black books. Use your resources to say, okay, this is what my vehicle trade-in should be worth. All right. And then lastly, making the purchase. Now, whether you're just writing a check for it or financing, there's always going to be some optional extras from a dealer. Now, I'm going to preface this conversation with I am biased towards this stuff. When I was working in the dealership, I didn't get to work with the people that came in, did an oil change, and left. And then 6 months later, they did the same thing. Those were not the people that I had the pleasure of talking to when it came to extended warranties. I had the pleasure of people coming in and say, hey, I have a $7,000 bill in the service department right now. Does my manufacturer warranty cover me? And it's like, nope, you ran out of your manufacturer warranty X months ago. Those were the people that I got to deal with. So I have these on every single one of my cars. My wife has it on her car. My dad has it on his car, even as a technician, just because I don't want to deal with it. Doesn't mean that you have to get them, right? If it doesn't fit your budget, don't do it, right? But there are some benefits with that. So what does it cover? What is the deductible? Do you have money for car repairs? For me, even though I keep my vehicles 3 years, I still have 8 years of coverage on my vehicle. Why? I don't know. What if in 3 years something happens and I don't want to change out of my vehicle? I still have that coverage. So that's just something that I don't want to worry about. But you got to decide what's best for you. Usually, if you're looking at it as a monthly payment component, it's $50, $60 a month for coverage on your vehicle, usually. Again, that's not always the case. Certified vehicles, new vehicles, those are going to be cheaper than used cars because they're newer. They're less likely to break. They already have coverage on them. Those warranties are discounted because of that. All right. But that being said, through the dealership, a lot of them offer things like life and disability and voluntary unemployment. That is something that we here at Mayo Employees Federal Credit Union offer as well. Usually that's a couple bucks a month, $7, $8 usually. Less than a cup of coffee nowadays, it seems. But they're there just to kind of protect, right? So the disability, I'm just going to read these verbatim. Protection designed to make a member's monthly payment up to the policy maximum should you become totally disabled due to a medically determined illness or injury and are unable to work, right? So if you get hurt, you get sick and you can't work, this is going to pay that monthly car bill for you up to the policy maximum, all right? Same thing with life. Essentially, it's going to pay off the loan if you die. About as easy as it gets. Now, obviously, there are stipulations for these. So if you're retired, you're not going to qualify for disability. Usually if you're over, I believe the age is 70, you can get it, but the payout isn't as much. So either way, talk to your loan officer about that one if you have further questions. And then involuntary unemployment, same thing as kind of the disability, just if you lose your job, right? And usually the dealer offers these, but if the dealer offers them, you have to finance with the dealer, all right? That is not something that you can purchase and finance within a MEFQ loan, all right? Versus the extended warranties where you can purchase through the dealer and you can finance those through a MEFQ loan, all right? The next one is gap coverage. Gap coverage or guaranteed asset protection. Essentially what this means is when you buy a vehicle, it's going to depreciate no matter what it is, whether it's a new car, used car, we've talked about that. But what gap does is if the vehicle is stolen, damaged, beyond repair, in a fire, whatever, insurance says, you know what, this vehicle is totaled. Gap insurance will pay off whatever the insurance company gives you up to your loan amount. So for example, let's say that Corvette that you bought, you're driving too fast and you decide to go right into a wall. Great, awesome, your car's destroyed. If you owe $120,000 on that vehicle, insurance says, you know what, this is only worth 100 grand, they're gonna write you a check for 100 grand. Well, you still got 20 grand to play with, right? That's where gap insurance will come in. It will pay that difference off up to, I believe it's 120% of the value of the vehicle, all right? Now this is offered through some insurance companies, some don't, so ask, you never know, but this is always offered through MEFQ loans. All right, so we do have an option to take care of that. So if you are overpaying a little bit, or if you have some negative equity that you're rolling in from your trade, if you trade in your vehicle, they give you 5 grand, but you owe 7 grand, that's gonna roll into the new vehicle. That's where this would come in, all right? And then again, I just kind of went over that. Gap Plus, this is always an option as well. If that does happen, and gap coverage pays off over what the vehicle's value is worth, it'll also give you $1,000 towards your replacement vehicle loan when you finance with us, as long as obviously that's done within 60 days of your settlement. And it's also going to pay for your deductible as well. So if you crash your vehicle, insurance says, hey, $500 and we'll process this for you, Gap will usually cover that. And again, I say usually because everything has an asterisk. So that's kind of it. I know I went through things fast, so if you have questions, now is the time. But that being said, all of our loan officers know this information, some better than me, right? So if you have questions, that's why we're here. There are a couple ways that you can fill out loans like we talked about. You can do it online, and that's where we give you that pre-approval, or obviously stop in. Alrighty. That being said, one of the other pieces that we always like to talk about is if you've already financed a vehicle. So for example, let's say I have a loan with Ford or Chevy or Honda, and my rate is X amount and ours is lower. Great, come see us. We can refinance that vehicle loan for you and get you a lower rate. All right. And so that's even right now, especially with loan rates the way that they are. Let's say you decide to finance a vehicle now and a year from now rates go down to whatever. Same thing, we can always refinance that loan to get you that lower rate. That's why we're here. So, but that being said, we may not be the lowest, right? That ebbs and flows, but usually we are. And so check around, yeah, if we're lower, come see us. Any questions? What's that?
I have 3 of them.
Shoot.
The acronym MRSP, what does that stand for?
Oh, MSRP. That is the manufacturer's suggested retail pricing. And so what that is when you are buying a new vehicle, there will be a price, and again, I'm using Ford because that's what I'm used to. There will be a price that Ford says you should sell the vehicle for this much, right? And usually that's where they keep their prices or start their pricing. And if there's any discounts or rebates, it will always come off that MSRP, manufacturer's suggested retail pricing. And that right now is a pretty fair price for a new vehicle.
Okay.
What was your other question?
Yeah. Now, when I've met with a finance officer,
Yeah.
I believe it's a finance officer, they suggest buying LED lights. I think I'm right on that.
Okay.
Some kind of a coating for the windshield, a glass coat.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on those 2 things?
So again, that is entirely up to you. For me, most insurance companies in Minnesota have glass coverage. So if have glass coverage. Yep, so if your windshield breaks or anything, usually there's a $0 deductible replacement for that. So for me, I usually don't mess around with like windshield coverage or anything like that. But again, to preface, I'm biased towards those products and certain products, right? So I'm not telling you, I don't want to tell you what to do, because if that has value to you and you want to spend your money on it, great. For me, I don't do that because I know that if I get a chip in my windshield, my insurance is going to replace it for free.
Yeah, no, it's not for that. It's if it rains, I believe.
Oh, like, so some of them have like, if you've heard of like Rain-X and stuff like that, there are products out there that do that better. Again, that's a value piece for you. If you see value in that, go for it. If not, don't. It's okay to say no to those pieces. I know that when I was a finance manager, I sold that stuff. I sold it because I saw value in it, right? Now, at that time, I was getting a heavy discount on those stuff. So the markup price, again, that is entirely up to you. In terms of LED lighting and stuff like that, that's more of the car salesman that's going to do that aspect of things. There's different trims like we talked about with vehicles. Some may have your standard halogen lights. Others, as you upgrade, are going to get the LED lights, right? LED lights, they're a little bit more powerful. It's a brighter light, so rather than that kind of yellow, it's going to be more white. I like LEDs.
You do?
I do, yeah. That's just one of those, like, where for me, as safety standards become more and more kind of available, LED lights are becoming more and more available. There is a cost to them, so usually if you are going to do a higher trim level, you're going to be paying for that. But that is one of the benefits that you can usually get with those, is the LED lights. Yeah. In the back.
We have a question from Jason H. I got pre-approval, but the car won't be built or delivered for about 60 days.
Yeah.
Do I need to reapply to see if I'm still covered?
So pre-approvals are good for 90 days through us. So one thing that I always like to tell people, yeah, if you order a vehicle and it's going to take 2, 3, 4, or 5 months to get, once you know that vehicle is going to be on wheels on the ground, that's when I would do the loan application. All right. Now, that being said, during that 90 days, rates are subject to change, right? I can't lock in a rate from 90 days ago. It's just not how it works. We don't lock in any rates for anything. So that's just one of those where when the vehicle comes in, that's when we'll do the loan. Now, you'll probably ask, okay, well, what if I do the loan now so that when it gets here, I can pay for it and then I'll have the rate of today, right? It's not how it works. I can't give you a loan for a vehicle that you don't own yet. And your insurance company is going to hate you if you do that. Because there are plenty times working at a dealer where we have gotten vehicles in that are damaged. We've literally had them fall off the truck before. That was both hilarious and terrible to watch. We have had vehicles that have gone to the distribution plant, sat there for literally 3 months, and then get sent back to the manufacturer because of a defect, right? So if that vehicle is going to take X amount of time to get here, once that vehicle is on the ground, that's when we can do the loan for it. Those are the rates that you're going to be subject to, but our loan pre-approvals are good for 90 days. After that, we'll need you to reapply. And usually if you're pre-approved for the first one, you're going to get pre-approved for the second one, and it's not a big deal. So that is my answer to that, Jason. Anything else?
What's the extended warranty? Is that 5 years?
Extended warranties can kind of be customized to whoever is purchasing them.
Because you said you have an 8 years.
Yeah. So I have 8 years of coverage on my car. Exactly, yeah. So usually extended service contracts can be customized to how you drive. So for example, let's say you're driving 30,000 miles a year. You don't want one that'll cover you for your 12,000 miles a year. So there are different ways that you can kind of customize those to fit your needs. Obviously, costs will vary depending on the dealership, depending on your relationship with them, and obviously depending on what type you want to get. But yes, those can kind of be customized. So if you only drive, I don't know, 70,000 miles in 10 years, right? You can adjust a program for that. That maybe the time is a little bit longer, but the mileage is a little less, and you can kind of play with those numbers a little bit. But that is something that you would need to discuss with the finance manager at that dealership. Yep. Any other questions? Sweet. Well, that's kind of it. That's all I really had for you. So That being said, let me just go here. I'm just going to put my info up on the screen one more time for you guys so you can see it. And I am not the only loan officer here. So that being said, if you do have questions, there are plenty of awesome people that we have here that can help you out. So if something comes up, obviously that's me. I think at the end here, I thought I had my info in there, but if you don't, that's fine. You can just send that application in. If you click Cascade Lake, that'll come to me. But there are very capable people at every location in the loan officer position that would be more than happy to help you out. So with that, I'm going to wrap things up. Again, if you need anything, give us a call. Do an app online, we'll give you a call. And if you have any questions,